10:30 p.m., an open valve at our Bryant Street pumping station caused water pressure for about 34,000 DC water customers to drop. The open valve meant that water in this distribution network went from 95 pounds per square inch to approximately 40 pounds per square inch. As a result, many customers experienced a sharp drop in pressure, or in some cases, water services not at all. By 9:36 p.m., the pressure was fully restored. The interruption in the service lasted about 66 minutes. We are investigating the cause of the open valve and will share that as soon as we know of one. No water was spilled or lost, nor were there any pipes or mains broken. The water was simply diverted from one distribution system to another. Our water distribution system is essentially networks of mains of varying size and travel the entire city, branching off to supply water to individual homes and buildings. The main impacted by this open valve last night supplies water for communities like Brooklyn, Woodridge on the east, Mount Pleasant and Columbia Heights, and Petworth in the center of the city, and Foxhall and parts of Georgetown on the west. It's a wide area that was affected, and we have created a map on our website to show customers more precisely if they were impacted. We also have reached out to try to connect with every single customer through robocalls, emails, our website, social media, and traditional media. We are working with the mayor, the council, and other stakeholders to help disseminate this advisory as far as possible. We ask everyone who hears this message to please share it with everyone you know of who may be using water in the impacted areas to be alert and take precautions. In the meantime, we are doing a broad set of water quality testing across the impacted area. We don't know yet what the tests will show, but we hope that it will all come back negative. If that's the case, we hope to lift the boil advisory by tomorrow morning. As a reminder, customers should bring water to a boil for 3 minutes, allow it to cool before using, and store cooled water in a clean container with a cover. Customers should use cooled boiled water or bottled water for drinking, brushing teeth, preparing and cooking food, making ice, preparing infant formula, and giving water to pets. For more information, please visit www.dcwater.com or contact DC Water Customer Service at 202-354-3600 or our 24-hour command center at 202-612-3400. I thank you, and I'll answer any questions you may have after Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you very much. And as David said, my name is Chris Rodriguez. I'm the director of the DC Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency. I'd like to talk a little bit about what the district as a customer of DC Water is doing to coordinate our efforts and to ensure minimal impact to residents and businesses from DC Water's precautionary boil water advisory. Since early this morning, we have been in constant communication with the mayor, with her office, with a lot of the district departments and agencies, and we've taken several steps, again, to ensure that there's minimal impact to the district and its residents. Out of an abundance of caution, the district is taking the following steps. First, HCEMA, my organization, earlier this morning at 4:34 a.m., issued an Alert DC message advising over 100,000 residents who have signed up for those alerts of the DC Water Advisory. The Department of Parks and Recreation has also done the following in coordination with the DC Department of Health. They have closed spray parks for at least the remainder of the day and pools in the affected areas that DC Water has identified. We have also mobilized water stations, closed water fountains, and recreation centers located in the affected areas. We have posted signage near showers, instructing people not to drink the water. DC Public Schools and DPR, Department of Parks and Recreation, are providing boil order instructions and bottled water to summer schools and summer camp sites. The advisory notice has also been sent to our charter schools. DC Public Libraries has also posted do not drink water signs at fountains in those libraries affected by the advisory. Going forward and over the course of the next 24 hours, we're going to continue to work with district agencies if additional support is needed, keep the mayor informed so any decisions that she might have to make, we'll make at that time. For now, I'll turn it back to DC Water for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Sir, there's been a certain amount of criticism from some residents that they didn't get notified in a timely fashion. Do you feel like you did everything you could to get the word out as quickly as you could, or do you feel like you could have done better?
No, I think that we did everything that we could. I will tell you that myself included and a number of our employees on our emergency team were up all night working on this and trying to figure out who was affected. We wanted to make sure that we contacted the right people, that we did not send an alarm to the people that were not affected. And so we did feel like, and we do feel like, that we did the right thing and we did everything that was possible and within our power. Yes, ma'am.
Could you give us a time? Aware of the open valve and what does that mean?
Well, so in this building here, we have and I'll also allow the technical people to chime in here as well. But we have valves that we open and close periodically, and depending on where we need to service and when we need to ramp up pressure and take water to. And there was maintenance going on. We're still investigating why the valve was open, but that did cause the drop in the pressure. We did see the drop occur, and we did begin to get phone calls, and then we corrected the problem immediately. And I'll allow Jason or Chuck to chime in on that if there's anything else to add.
You got to step to the mic. I know it's intimidating.
Could you tell us your name? My name is Charles Sweeney. Charles Sweeney. So last night I got a phone call about low pressure in our second high zone. So I had people on site here. In talking over the phone, we did some troubleshooting. In that troubleshooting, identified that a valve was incorrectly placed. I gave instructions for the valve to be closed, and I came in to assess the impact. So that's.
There was no alarm or anything. It was like just somebody said, "Oh, we're noticing that in our home we don't have pressure."
Well, we were getting calls at the same time, so these things happen simultaneously.
So does that valve have to be manual or automatic?
Could I ask you guys, when you ask a question, could you please identify yourselves as well, please?
That's Cameron Thompson of DCW 50. Are the valves manual or automatic? And if manual, so is this a...
Well, they're both. So you can operate them manually and you can operate them automatically.
So we don't know. Do you know at this time, was this a human error or was this...
We don't know. We have to investigate, and I wouldn't want to speculate.
I have a question for Dr. Nesbitt. Can I ask you, Dr. Nesbitt, to step up? I'm just worried about how you might be concerned. I woke up this morning, had coffee, filled it up, didn't see the alert until a little bit later. Is there really a big concern for folks who may have ingested water this morning, may not have known? Can you address that issue?
Yes, so thank you for the question. So as Director Rodriguez has mentioned, we'll be working very closely with DC Water and awaiting the results of all of the water sampling that they are doing aggressively across the city. As the advisory has come out and has provided guidance to everyone to do the boil water advisory, we are working with them to make sure that everyone knows about that. If you have ingested or used water for cooking or drinking, prior to that, we suggest that you monitor yourself for any signs or symptoms, and that would be having an upset stomach or any nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Those would be the types of things that you would need to be on the lookout for. Everyone will get those symptoms. No one may get those symptoms. Having those symptoms may not be related to having used the water. If you have those symptoms, we would suggest that you call your healthcare provider and have a conversation with them about what you should do next, instead of going directly to a emergency room or urgent care center and having a conversation with them. So that would be the appropriate next step to do. It's not necessary to be overly alarmed by having used the water this morning prior to reviewing the boil water advisory if you are a resident in the affected area.
Doctor, could you address if pregnant women consumed water before they knew, should they continue to breastfeed, or would you recommend that they not breastfeed until they've monitored themselves and are not symptomatic?
There's no need to discontinue breastfeeding at this time for anyone, whether you live in the affected area or not.
Even if you ingested the water?
That's correct. There's no need to discontinue breastfeeding.
So, my understanding, are you guys closing?
Can you continue to introduce yourself? Thank you.
Are you guys closing the pools and splash parks for now? And I'm trying to understand that because I thought you said that it was okay to shower. If it's okay to shower and bathe, why close the pools?
So the behavior at a splash park is a little bit different. I don't know if you've ever gone to a splash pad or a splash park, or you notice the people who use them. They tend to be a lot younger than many of us, and they stand there and they sort of drink the water at a splash park. And so our concern is that they are not boiling the water prior to using it. And so that's our decision around the splash pad. And in terms of the pool, the science behind the pool is that we would prefer to have the pools do what we call super chlorinating the pools beyond the traditional levels of chlorine that are present in the pools, and aiming for a reopening of the pools tomorrow in the affected area.
Dr. Nesbitt, is it E. coli that you're worried about? What is it?
Again, as DC Water has previously mentioned, we are not yet aware of anything being found in the water, and we are still working with them to understand what the water sampling test results would yield.
Can somebody explain to us what is the risk of, why is bacteria able to grow when the water pressure goes down? What is it that actually presents this risk to the public?
I could explain, and I'll have them explain the water science behind it again. That this is DC Water. Wow. So welcome to DC Health and what public health does for the District of Columbia. So anytime water is stagnant, there's the opportunity for pathogens to grow. And also there would be, and I would ask that DC Water also come and share what their concerns or perspectives are about it, is that there is also, anytime there's a change in water pressure, the opportunity for things that were not previously moving to move when the water pressure then increases. But I would ask them to talk a little bit more about the science behind that.
So again, the concern when we lose water pressure is you have a pressurized pipe that becomes depressurized, so infiltration is a concern. So we're just worried that there's infiltration that happened to the pipe, and we're just testing out of precaution to make sure that that didn't happen.
What gets in there? What kind of?
It could be groundwater. So, you know, water is sitting in the ground, but the pipe itself is at a higher pressure. And when it loses pressure, it equalizes, so then you have a chance of infiltration. I was not.
They were talking about E. coli. Are you saying, is this the same kind of concern?
It's something that we are testing for, but again, the test will bear that out. So that's why we're.
What you're testing for? I think that's what we're getting at. What is the worst case scenario? What bacteria are you testing for?
Well, we won't know that until we test.
You don't know what you're testing for?
Well, we do, but it comes back as a broad spectrum, and then we narrow down.
And when are those results expected?
Tomorrow morning.
And where do you do those tests? You do them here, or do you go out to people's homes? Where do you draw samples? We had sample points throughout the distribution system. Some are at businesses, some are at homes, some are off of hydrants.
How do you determine the map? Apparently, it looks like the northern part of the city. How do you determine the affected area?
It follows in line with a pressure zone, a particular pressure zone.
Kevin with Channel 7 here. Two questions. One, when was the last time DC Water had a boil advisory to this extent? And then two, what's the approximate number of people affected in this zone?
So the second high zone has approximately 34,000 people affected.
People or
residents or premises. I should say premises.
Right. So can somebody translate customers into actual numbers of people for us? Because we know there's a big difference between you guys like to go with that lower number. We'd like to go with the higher number.
Well, we don't know what that higher number is
You must
because
have some idea how that extrapolates. Come on.
Well, we don't have a count of all the people that are living in the larger apartment buildings. So our service comes to a point of presence at those buildings.
One customer could be Howard University.
Yes.
So one customer could be thousands of people.
Well, I would say maybe hundreds.
Do you know how many people work in the area?
I do not.
And then following up then, the other question, when was the last time there was a boil advisory to this extent?
I don't remember a boil advisory to this extent.
So the largest in memory?
In memory.
2014. My understanding is it was 2014-15 was the last time we had a precautionary boil advisory of this magnitude. The other thing I do want to mention is that we do have up on our Twitter feed, on our website, a new map that is an interactive map where the customer can actually put in their address and pinpoint if they are affected or not. And also the footprint has gotten smaller as of today, so we've been able to identify as well and more so pinpoint those customers. So the footprint is smaller today, and we can also pinpoint where those exact customers are at and who is affected as well. Yes, ma'am.
Christy King, WTOP. Let's talk about this advisory. I don't think people know 212 is boiling. I've got coffee systems saying, oh, we're double protected. We have filters. We heat our water to 204 degrees. Boil means what?
So you should bring the water to where it's bubbling, and it should be bubbling for at least 3 minutes. So that would be satisfactory.
And that's not 204 degrees.
That's 212 degrees. We also, one of the things we did do is we have our frequently asked questions as well in Spanish and also in English. So we are very aware of that and attempting to satisfy those customers and serve those customers as well. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think there's any need to be going door to door in some of these communities? If you're starting to hear that the robocalls are not being picked up heavily in a certain community, is there any plan to go door to door? We do not have a plan to go door to door right now. We discussed our strategy as well in the middle of the night with EPA, and so our strategy is approved by EPA, and it is the strategy that we think is the best right now. We are working the best that we can and as hard as we can to make sure that every single customer that we have in the affected area is notified, but we do not have plans at this time to go door to door. Yes, ma'am. We don't have a plan at this time to hand out any bottled water at this point in time. You know, that was spoken to and about, but we don't have any plans at this time to do so.
You do have fill stations, correct? Did I hear earlier? Portable filling stations.
Water filling stations, fill stations.
You just to clarify. So are they not filling?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So, yes, we have mobilized water stations, and we are distributing bottles of water.
Where are you distributing water?
So we can provide you with a comprehensive list of all the facilities where we're doing that. We can, so you can, so.
The pools and splash parks just in the affected area?
Yes, yes.
So
Just
outside that.
that's correct. That's correct, and we can provide you with a list where we are distributing that water.
Can you go back to the gap of 8 hours between when the first alarm was sounded here and when you sent out the first alert to residents? Do you really think that was a satisfactory gap in time to do that? That you guys really did your best effort in notifying citizens? Because there's a lot of people in the community who really think that it sounds like, you know, that you had some idea of the zone that was impacted.
So I just want to be clear on the timeline. Last night, DC government had received information that the Bryant Park water pump had begun to malfunction. Later that night, within, I think, you know, what DC Water had mentioned, about an hour later, it had become fully operational. The DC government did not receive the boil advisory alert until it was issued earlier this morning. Within minutes, we issued the Alert DC message to the over 100,000 residents who have signed up. And I will also say, one of the things that we count on for you guys to do, and for the residents to do as well, is to go to alertdc.dc.gov and sign up, because that is the way that we communicate these issues to the public and to our residents to ensure they have the most up-to-date information. So as soon as the boil advisory alert was issued, within minutes we issued the alert.
And who's responsible? That's DC Water's function, is to issue that alert?
No, the Homeland Security Emergency Management Agency issues the alert.
Makes that decision?
Yes.
So again, why did it take 8 hours to determine that a boil alert was necessary? I mean, again...
Right. I think I'd have to turn to DC Water for that information.
Yeah, I thought that I already answered that. We had to go through an entire process and get a clear understanding of what we were dealing with. And so it takes time and analyzing where we needed to pinpoint what valve was turned on or off and those sort of things. So it took some time for us to get there. And so, but we took every precautionary measure that we could. So I want to thank you guys very much for coming out today. Please continue to look at our website, and we'll also issue press releases. And as we get the test in, we'll disseminate those as well. Thank you very much and have a good day.
There's a link to our interactive map.
All right, guys, so we're back in the newsroom here. Kind of a really big scare for DC Water. If you're on with us, perhaps you're interested in finding out the news about that. It turns out, to kind of conclude that whole press conference, they're saying that advisory might not be lifted till tomorrow morning, so be aware of that if you are local in the DMV area. And there's a map on dcwater.com of the areas affected, and quite frankly, it is kind of a large area of both Northwest and Northeast, so be mindful of that, especially if you're in that Center City, Logan Shaw, Howard University area, and then spread out into the Northwest and Northeast. Unfortunately, it does sound like it's going to go on a little longer than expected, and they won't be able to give that all clear till tomorrow morning. So be mindful of those warnings and boil your stuff, or else, rely heavily on your bottled water and bottled stuff as well. So we wanted to make sure we took that to the top of our stream here that was live from one of the, where was that exactly? That was at the Bryant Street pumping station, that press conference. You could see a lot of people from DC Health represented there to kind of talk about what to do if you do fall ill, hopefully not, from any of these, from any of that malfunction from the valve. So otherwise, guys, totally switching gears, we have a lot of other stuff coming up today that's live. Right now, they are prepping for President Trump to meet the Queen. They're going to be meeting at Windsor Castle in Berkshire, England. And there was just a ceremony to kind of get ready for that greeting and that meetup. And we have a camera there from our pool. So I want to jump over to the UK and show you that. Earlier this morning, President Trump and Prime Minister Theresa May held a joint news conference. We took that live to our Facebook page on Fox 5 DC's Facebook. So if you want to see that, we may even play it out later here on our YouTube stream if you're interested. Couple other live things coming in. We're told a press conference from the Department of Justice, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will be speaking. We're told it's about Robert Mueller, and this might be interesting. So when that comes up, we'll flash that over to you live. And then some other stories that we have as well for the day. Hillary Clinton just finished up speaking in Pittsburgh. She was at the American Federation of Teachers convention. That was this year's convention, and that just kind of rolled out. So unfortunately, we don't have that right now. But let's go over to President Trump meeting the Queen right now.
pulled up the wastefield inspection.
If you guys are joining us here as President Trump and his wife, First Lady Melania, meet the Queen, pretty amazing shots there of Windsor Castle, gorgeous with the Star Spangled Banner and the other military themes played by those soldiers, and really cool ceremonious kind of event here on that lawn. So I believe that is sort of the ceremony. That's what we're going to get from that. We're going to jump it over very shortly to this news conference that's being held by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Now, this is very hotly anticipated because he is making some sort of announcement about law enforcement, leading to the fact that there might be some possible indictments. Listen in.
Presented by the Special Counsel's Office. The indictment charges 12 Russian military officers by name for conspiring to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. 11 of the defendants are charged with conspiring to hack into computers, steal documents, and release those documents with the intent to interfere in the election. One of those defendants and a 12th Russian military officer are charged with conspiring to infiltrate computers of organizations involved in administering elections, including state boards of election, secretaries of state, and companies that supply software used to administer elections. According to the allegations in the indictment, the defendants worked for 2 units of the main intelligence directorate of the Russian General Staff, known as the GRU. The units engaged in active cyber operations to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. There was one unit that engaged in active cyber operations by stealing information, and a different unit that was responsible for disseminating the stolen information. The defendants used 2 techniques to steal information. First, they used a scheme known as spear phishing, which involves sending misleading email messages and tricking the users into disclosing their passwords and security information. Second, the defendants hacked into computer networks and installed malicious software that allowed them to spy on users and capture keystrokes, take screenshots, and exfiltrate or remove data from those computers. The defendants accessed email accounts of volunteers and employees of a U.S. presidential campaign, including the campaign chairman, starting in March of 2016. They also hacked into the computer networks of a congressional campaign committee and a national political committee. The defendants covertly monitored the computers and planted hundreds of files containing malicious computer code and stole emails and other documents. The conspirators created fictitious online personas, including DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0, and they used those personas to release information, including thousands of stolen emails and other documents, beginning in June of 2016. The defendants falsely claimed that DC Leaks was a group of American hackers and that Guccifer 2.0 was a lone Romanian hacker. In fact, both were created and controlled by the Russian GRU. In addition to releasing documents directly to the public, the defendants transferred stolen documents to another organization that is not identified by name in the indictment, and they used that organization as a pass-through to release the documents. They discussed the timing of the release in an attempt to enhance the impact on the election. In an effort to conceal their connections to Russia, the defendants used a network of computers around the world, and they paid for it using cryptocurrencies. The conspirators corresponded with several Americans during the course of the conspiracy through the internet. There's no allegation in this indictment that the Americans knew they were corresponding with Russian intelligence officers. In a second related conspiracy, Russian GRU officers hacked the website of a state election board and stole information about 500,000 voters. They also hacked into computers of a company that supplied software used to verify voter registration information. They targeted state and local officials responsible for administering elections, and they sent spear phishing emails to people involved in administering elections, including attaching malicious software. The indictment includes 11 criminal allegations and a forfeiture allegation. Count 1 charges 11 defendants for conspiring to access computers without authorization and to damage those computers in connection with efforts to interfere with the presidential election. Counts 2 through 9 charge those 11 defendants with aggravated identity theft by employing the usernames and passwords of victims in order to commit computer fraud. Count 10 charges those 11 defendants with money laundering for transferring cryptocurrencies through a web of transactions in order to purchase computer servers, register domains, and make other payments in furtherance of their hacking activities while trying to conceal their connections to Russia. Count 11 charges 2 defendants for a separate conspiracy to access computers without authorization and to damage those computers in connection with efforts to infiltrate computers used to administer elections. Finally, the indictment seeks the forfeiture of property involved in the criminal activity. There is no allegation in this indictment that any American citizen committed a crime. There's no allegation that the conspiracy changed the vote count or affected any election result. The Special Counsel's investigation is ongoing, and there will be no comments by the Special Counsel at this time. Assistant Attorney General John Demers is here with me today because we intend to transition responsibility for this indictment to the Justice Department's National Security Division while we await the apprehension of the defendants. Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General Ed O'Callahan is also with me, and he's been assisting in managing the Special Counsel investigation. I want to caution you that people who speculate about federal investigations usually do not know all of the relevant facts. We do not try cases on television or in congressional hearings. Most anonymous leaks are not from the government officials who are actually conducting these investigations. We follow the rule of law, which means that we follow procedures and we reserve judgment. We complete our investigations and we evaluate all of the relevant evidence before we reach any conclusion. That is how the American people expect their Department of Justice to operate, and that is how our department is going to operate. In our justice system, everyone who's charged with a crime is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. It should go without saying, people who are not charged with a crime also are presumed innocent. The indictment was returned today because prosecutors determined that the evidence was sufficient to present these allegations to a federal grand jury. Our analysis is based solely on the facts, the law, and Department of Justice policies. I briefed President Trump about these allegations earlier this week. The President is fully aware of the Department's actions today. By my remarks, I have not identified the victims. We confront foreign interference in American elections. It's important for us to avoid thinking politically as Republicans or Democrats, and instead to think patriotically as Americans. Our response must not depend on which side was victimized. The internet allows foreign adversaries to attack America in new and unexpected ways. Free and fair elections are always hard fought and contentious. There will always be adversaries who seek to exacerbate our divisions and try to confuse, divide, and conquer us. So long as we are united in our commitment to the values enshrined in the Constitution, they will not succeed. Partisan warfare, fueled by modern technology, does not fairly reflect the grace, dignity, and unity of the American people. The blame for election interference belongs to the criminals who committed election interference. We need to work together to hold the perpetrators accountable. We need to keep moving forward to preserve our values, protect against future interference, and defend America. I have time to take a few questions.
General Rosenstein, two questions for you, sir. Number one, the time of the day on the eve of the president's meeting with Putin, can you talk about that? And also, just today, the president described the Mueller investigation as a witch hunt.
The timing, as I mentioned, is a function of the collection of the facts, the evidence of the law, and a determination that it was sufficient to present the indictment at this time. As I mentioned, I did brief the president. With regard to the nature of the investigation, I only comment on the evidence. The evidence that is reflected in our indictments and in our charges represents a determination by prosecutors and agents without regard to politics. We believe the evidence is sufficient to justify the charges.
Yes, Deputy Attorney General, I know you've talked about the fact that, in your view, the evidence doesn't show any votes were changed as a result of this hacking. But you did say that a company used as a pass-through coordinated with these defendants to enhance the timing of the release and the impact on the election. Can you talk a little bit about what the evidence you have shows in that respect?
So what I've talked about today is what is alleged in the indictment. We know, according to the allegations in the indictment, the goal of the conspirators was to have an impact on the elections. What impact they may have had, or what their motivation may have been independently of what's required to prove this offense is a matter of speculation. That's not our responsibility. What I've said is there's no allegation in the indictment about it, and that's not our charge.
In terms of the state election information, you said about 500,000 voters information was collected. Is there any evidence that what the Russians did with that information? And is there any evidence of other states being successfully penetrated by the Russians?
I think that it's important for you to understand what I've told you are the allegations that are included in the indictment. The FBI and other intelligence community agencies are working constantly to defend against cyber attacks in the United States. This case is just about one particular effort that was made during the 2016 election. The efforts of our department, of the Department of Homeland Security, and other federal agencies, and of all of the state election boards throughout the country are ongoing. And those efforts preceded this indictment, and they're going to post-date this indictment. So we have continued to share any relevant intelligence with all of our partners. It will take a longer time to talk about this, but there is a concerted and organized effort by the federal government to make sure that we do deter and prevent any sort of cyber attacks on our elections, and that we harden our election systems to prevent against any kind of intrusions.
We'll take the last question.
Deputy Attorney General, you mentioned that you briefed President Trump on this earlier this week. Did he indicate any support for this action, and what was his reaction?
I'm allowed the President to speak for himself. Obviously, it was important for the President to know what information we've uncovered, because he's got to make very important decisions for the country. So he needs to understand what evidence we have of foreign election interference. Thank you very much.
You were hoping that...
Who ordered the attack?
All right, guys, so there you go. The breaking news from the Department of Justice. That was Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein talking about the indictment of 12 Russians accused of hacking into emails in the DNC and therefore sabotaging the 2016 election. Now, this comes just days before Monday's meeting of President Trump with Putin in Helsinki, Finland. So it is quite interesting timing on that. These are the latest charges in a probe that has already netted some guilty people in this investigation, some aides of President Trump's campaign. So this is continuing. This is all coming at an interesting time because this is right before President Trump's meeting with Putin next week. So we're going to be watching and waiting to learn more about that as it comes. Right now, just a quick bump shot of Windsor Castle after that beautiful ceremony of the President and the Queen. It had stayed up for us. So there's that over in the UK. Again, President Trump, of course, still on his travels. He's going to be in Europe for that big meeting in Finland coming up early next week. In case you missed some of the drama yesterday in Congress and the FBI probes and some of the other top stories, we're going to show you some of the top stories from today and yesterday in our packages from us here at TTG in DC and our sister stations around the nation. Take a look at some of our top stories that we've been working on in the past couple of days.
Question. Not a dull moment. FBI agent Peter Strzok was under the gun from the start. He began by saying that his anti-Trump political views did not affect his work, even on the Hillary Clinton email probe.
It is not who I am, and it is not something I would ever do.
But this keeps coming back to his text message with then FBI attorney Lisa Page, including this exchange in particular. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? No, he won't. We'll stop it.
Mr. Gowdy, as I've stated, that text was written late at night in shorthand.
I don't care when it was written. I don't care whether it was longhand, cursive. I don't care about any of that. I want to know what it meant, Agent Strzok.
And the relationship between Strzok and Page even became part of a line of questioning.
I can't help but wonder when I see you looking there with a little smirk, how many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Sheriff. But this goes beyond the Clinton email investigation because Strzok was also a player in the Mueller Russia probe before he was removed from that team after the text messages surfaced. The partisan divide in this joint hearing was evident, with Democrats coming to Strzok's defense, one even saying he deserved a Purple Heart.
I have never seen my colleagues so out of control, so angry, and so desperate to protect a president that we all know is not fit to be president.
A former FBI attorney, Lisa Page, is scheduled to be questioned today, but that hearing will be behind closed doors. This one was in full public view. Boy, it got heated.
The witness will answer the question.
Not a dull moment. FBI agent Peter Strzok was under the gun from the start. He began by saying that his anti-Trump political views did not affect his work, even on the Hillary Clinton email probe.
It is not who I am, and it is not something I would ever do.
But this keeps coming back to those text messages with then FBI attorney Lisa Page, including this exchange in particular.
Hit them, I saw that someone was laying on the ground.
Jamie Griffin was driving just after midnight Saturday in North Buckhead. She pulled up to this stop sign in front of the Capital City Club seconds after 4 people were robbed there while waiting for an Uber.
As soon as I hit the stop sign, I heard a gunshot. Looked over to my left, and I saw a group of people just gather. It was very, very dark where they were. I couldn't really see what was going on, and they started screaming for me to call 911.
Police tell us the victims attended a wedding reception at the private club and were waiting for a ride. 2 men in a white car saw them and decided to attack.
Male suspect exited that vehicle. He approached the victims and produced a handgun and then demanded some of their property.
The victims handed over their stuff not long after the gunfire rang out.
One of the victims attempted to follow that suspect. This resulted in the suspect turning around and firing a shot at that victim,
hitting him in the stomach. The robber jumped back into the passenger seat and the driver took off. Griffin says the 911 operator told her what to do until help could arrive.
She was just telling me what to say to them, the information to relay to them so they could administer whatever they needed to do to him. Right. So it was just, trying to stay calm.
It's a second look at history as the Justice Department reopens its investigation into the death of Emmett Till.
It's very exciting that there's a possibility that they will finally find out the full story, the whole truth.
In 1955, Till, a 14-year-old boy from Chicago, was kidnapped from his uncle's home in Money, Mississippi. 3 days later, his mutilated body was found in a nearby river. So disfigured, he could only be identified by a ring he was wearing. The brutal murder happened after the black teen allegedly flirted with white shopkeeper Carolyn Donham. Donham's husband and his half-brother were charged and acquitted in Till's death.
The family worked hard to press the Department of Justice to reopen the case.
In March, the Justice Department told Congress they would be reopening the case after receiving new information that Donham was lying. The author of The Blood of Emmett Till believes revelations in his book prompted the second look into the slaying of the teen.
The FBI contacted me in the spring of 2017. I shared with them my research materials. Soon thereafter, I got a subpoena from the Justice Department and shared all my research materials with them in a more formal way.
The book claims in a 2008 interview, Donham admitted to lying about the teen grabbing her and whistling at her in the store in 1955. In it, she also says, quote, "Nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him." The two men eventually confessed to Till's murder, but were never retried. No one else was ever charged. In New York, Jackie Ibanez, Fox News.
If you're afraid of heights, don't look down.
Up 82 very steep steps.
Watch your head right here.
At the top of the Oregon Peak Lookout Tower, just above 3,400 feet near the Yuba County community of Dobbins.
We are the first line of defense when it comes to spotting fires.
CAL FIRE VIPs, volunteers in prevention, are watching constantly for any sign of smoke. From here, you have a spectacular 360-degree view of the Sierra Nevada foothills and beyond.
You're like in God's country.
Mary Batista coordinates a team of volunteers at this tower. In some parts of the state, cameras have replaced these watchful eyes. But throughout this portion of the foothills, CAL FIRE depends on the trained volunteers spotting and reporting fires to the nearest station.
Column of white smoke, 116 degrees.
The accuracy of their instrumentation cannot be denied.
So if we spot a fire, we do is line this up on the smoke.
Volunteers like Don Mays communicate with a series of towers to report and cross-check the coordinates of smoke sightings.
If you get a cross on it from two different points, generally that's the spot where the fire's at.
With Sierra thunderstorms in the forecast this week, their observations will be even more relied upon.
Lightning strikes can start a fire days later, so it's always good to have the bearings on the hits.
Because of the lookout volunteers, several fires have already been extinguished quickly.
Well, you're watching out for somebody's property. If you can spot the smoke and get it called in, you could be saving lives. You definitely save property.
And it is still so early in the traditional fire season.
It's going to be a tough year.
All right, guys, well, you may remember as one of the top stories of the past few days, the story about a woman who was harassed at a Chicago forest preserve by a man now known to be named Timothy Tribus, 62 years old. He's been charged with a hate crime for harassing her for wearing a Puerto Rico shirt. She had the flag on her shirt, and this became a big story. He was seen on video chastising her. We have that story coming up just to kind of show you an intro to remind you of that story, and then we're going to go right over to Chicago where they're holding a press conference and news conference on this, and actually that might be coming up sooner than I thought. So we're going to flash over there to kind of see what the outcome of that has been. He has now been charged with 2 felony counts of committing a hate crime, in addition to some other misdemeanor counts of assault that he already was facing. So now let's go over to Chicago and listen into what they're saying about this case.
She has a statement regarding the most recent developments with the incident that occurred at the Cook County Forest Preserve on June 14th. Following her, I will be giving statements from the Puerto Rican agenda, specifically asking for the policy change of the Cook County Board of Directors to employ effective immediately. Next, we will have Charlie Serrano, who is the co-chair of our Policy and Public Affairs Committee of the Puerto Rican Agenda, Chicago. He will give some statements about the Casa Puertorriqueña and specifically the developments around the bankruptcy scandal. Following him, we have elected officials who will comment on our plan of action moving forward with that specific incident, and then we will open it up for questions and answers on all the topics. So without further ado, please help me welcome Mia Irizarry.
Good morning. My name is Mia Irizarry, and this is my official statement. The eve of Officer Patrick Connor's hearing, from when he blatantly ignored several pleas of help by me, he decides to step down. The emotions welling in me are too numerous to sit and describe each one, so I decided to pick the two that keep reappearing among the chaos. Firstly, I am severely disappointed. I will never get to hear from this man, this protector, his reasoning for why my safety, no, my life had such little value to him. Why an American citizen could not reap the benefits of the police force when it was most needed. I will never get to hear his explanation of understanding his response of not stepping in because Tim was a regular with no violent history. Yet Mr. Timothy Tribus was charged with domestic violence in the past. How could this man, who had been on the force for 10 years, defend his lack of action? How can an American defend denying a fellow American help? What a coward to run away when his discrepancies were brought to the light, when justice was to be served. Secondly, I feel indescribable joy. This man will never be in a position to serve and protect a life, yet turn away again. Whether I helped 1 or 100 humans to avoid a run-in with a former officer, I have done my job. My persistence and the support of the hundreds who stood by me are what made this possible. There is truly a fierce power behind the masses. United we stand. Thank you to every single person who checked in on me, to anyone that contacted the Cook County Forest Preserve demanding answers on my behalf, and to those individuals that even went as far as to file more complaints against Patrick Connor. Thank you.
So, from the standpoint of the Puerto Rican agenda of Chicago, what we can acknowledge and what we witnessed on that video, first was an interpersonal relation that clearly demonstrated racism, right? But that's not the bigger issue. The bigger issue is what we watched when the police officer on duty did absolutely nothing as this assault was occurring on Mia. And in fact, the only time that he did something is when her cousin attempted to intervene, and therefore he started to push her cousin back. So what that says is not only he felt very protected by the system that upholds him, the system of racism rooted in white supremacy, but he also wanted to make sure that the assault continued. So we really need to think deeply about that. And from my understanding, there have been several apologies issued. But the thing is that apologies are only the beginning. What we're asking for as the Puerto Rican agenda of Chicago is meaningful, measurable, and palpable change. And that comes in the form of policy. So what we need to think about here is there's going to be two things we're asking the Cook County Board of Commissioners to do. We need an audit. We need to understand, from a representation standpoint, who are the individuals working in Cook County? What populations do they represent? And what is that in proportion to the Latino population of Cook County? The second audit we need to understand is what is currently in place with respect to sensitivity training, cultural competency, education of the populations that comprise Cook County. We need to understand what is currently in place so that there can be some reforms to what actually needs to be done, because apparently what is in place is not working. And what we need to know when I talk about meaningful and measurable and palpable is that just attending a diversity training once a year, or maybe once in your tenure, is not going to make a measurable difference. People need to understand that they will be evaluated on how they apply this information, how their interactions are with the public, and how they truly understand the history, the experience, the contributions that the populations of Cook County have made to this country. And the need for this education is so great Because what we're seeing right now is at the federal government level, it has essentially been made permissible to act in this way. It has been glorified, and essentially it can be sanctioned. That's what we saw. And therefore, as many of our great state leaders say, this can't happen in Illinois. Well, we want to know, what exactly are you going to do to put in place, and what's the timeline to do it? There's been a history and a legacy of ignoring the Puerto Rican experience or misrepresenting the history and the relationship. That was clearly evidenced by the comments from the perpetrator when he was asking if Mia was an American citizen. That should be basic knowledge. That's an indictment on our education system, that nobody knows that as basic knowledge. And therefore, it also represents what happened at the federal level in the face of a catastrophic natural disaster. The inaction, the inadequacy, the inefficiency, the negligence of the federal government in the face of the largest hurricane that ever made landfall in Puerto Rico. Massive death. And what people were told, wait your turn, you're blowing up our budget, you're being dramatic. And so it's those types of activities at that level of leadership that give permission for the perpetrator to act as such. The police officer who took an oath to serve and protect, to ignore and to make sure that that assault proceeded, that's a problem. And that's why we're working with Cook County Commissioner Luis Arroyo Jr. to support him in his reforms that he's attempting to make in the Board of Commissioners. We understand that there had been a filing of hate crimes, 2 counts against the perpetrator, and that's good, but that's just a start. Because this is a deeper problem and it's not going to get solved overnight. And we need to be intentional. There need to be benchmarks, milestones, and a level of accountability like we have never seen before. So we say all this because that is the work of the Puerto Rican agenda, is to advance our community in the space and place of policy so we can have real, palpable, measurable change. We can't stand by idly like this police officer. In fact, the Cook County Board needs to investigate and see if he is eligible for his pension, because just in his basic job description, he did not fulfill it. He specifically went against fulfilling it. And I have a problem with my tax dollars going to ensure that he is comfortable in retirement, as I'm sure many other Cook County taxpayers would feel. But as I said, this is not about punishment, this is about a teachable moment. And we need to ensure that not only the Cook County Board, but the City of Chicago, all the agencies, our federal government understands, the Park District, everyone, that they understand the importance of what we need to do in terms of educating about cultural sensitivity, cultural competency, being linguistically and culturally responsive, being anti-racist. We have to name it. Because this country has been founded and built on white supremacy, we have to actively work against it. So with that, we're going to transition. I'm going to ask Charlie Serrano to come up and speak about what the Puerto Rican agenda has been doing with respect to addressing the issue around Casa Puertorriqueña. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. For over 70 years, the Puerto Rican community has made Chicago its home. Since 1966, the Puerto Rican Parade Committee has held a parade in downtown. For decades, the Puerto Rican Parade Committee has held a festival, bringing close to 500,000 people to this great, humble park. During that period of time, there was the purchase of a building This building was called the Casa Puertorriqueña, named after Daniel Ramos, one of our leaders that was here in the city of Chicago since the early 1950s. That organization, that non-for-profit organization, which was a 501c3, lost its 501c3 status under the present administration, under the last 3 administrations of that organization, and they walked into bankruptcy court last year in February, giving up the building and submitting bankruptcy papers in Chapter 11. At the Puerto Rican agenda, we found that appalling, because this organization has received close to $1 million in funding from the state of Illinois to repair the building and for programs within that building. We found it appalling that this type of administration had continued while it receives funds from the parade, receives funds from the events, it receives funds from renting the location. It still took out loans, it took out notes on that building, and now it's losing. The Puerto Rican agenda has stepped forward, getting together with organizations such as Hispanic Housing, LAMA, the Motorcycle Association, with New Life Church, and others. We have brought together a series of proposals and investigating the facts. We're in a fact-finding mission. We want to let the public know that we will not let this building go or fall into the process of gentrification, because now it's very popular. For those of us that were born and raised here, that have raised our families, that still live around the park, have seen rents go from $400 a month to $1,800 a month. We cannot continue this iconic institution to fall into the hands of speculators, developers that will continue on tearing this community apart. So the Puerto Rican agenda will be making a report on the fact-finding, but we will go up to the bankruptcy court with a proposal that will keep the Casa Puertorriqueña in the hands of the community, will reorganize this organization so this building could be under a trust and we could responsibly manage the trust of the Puerto Rican community. We want to thank you. I want to take this opportunity to introduce our alderman, our strength in the 26th Ward, who has defended the Puerto Rican community, Division Street, the Paseo Puertorriqueño, and also these flags that stand on Division Street as a message that we are here and we are here to stay. Please join us, Alderman Roberto Maldonado.
Before I make my remarks about the building of the Casa Puertorriqueña, I just want to make some comments into what happened at the Forest Preserve. I was a county commissioner for almost 15 and a half years. And what I saw, and I watched the entire video that Mia taped, and she ran it by Facebook. What I saw was the character and the strength and the decency of a true Puerto Rican woman. As a Puerto Rican man, I don't know if I would have been able to be that controlled as she was. And that speaks to the character of our people. And what she is doing now, is the right thing to do. I'm not her attorney, but I think that the Forest Preserve should be charged with a hate crime. And now that this ex-officer also retired or resigned, he should also, as a person, should be sued with a hate crime. Because this is intolerable. This is not the first time that acts like this has happened, but this is the first time that Mia Irizarry documented from beginning to end. And I hope that would be the end of this series of attacks against us Puerto Ricans in Chicago. Let me just close this comment here, my segment about the Forest Preserve. I want to challenge each and every one of us to a Puerto Rican flag T-shirt challenge today, and for that to be. And for that to happen, Friday, July 20th, next Friday, let us all walk out of our homes and our children as well, with a Puerto Rican T-shirt, which I'm wearing today. But I want each one of you next Friday to walk out of your respective homes, go to work, go to church, go to day camp with a Puerto Rican shirt. And those of you who are friends of the Puerto Rican community, I invite you to do as such. Let me turn in the page about the Puerto Rican Parade building. You know, the one thing an alderman still can do, we can downzone properties. That's about the only influence an alderman has. Nothing else. Nothing else. So I took the action during the last city council meeting to introduce an amendment to the zoning designation of that building from whatever it is to an M1, manufacturing. Very few things can be built with that designation. The hearing will take place next Tuesday. No, next week, the Tuesday before City Council. And I want each and every one of you, and we're going to promote it through Facebook, to please come down and testify. Testify, why do you think it is important to downzone? Why do you think it is important that by doing so, it will end up in responsible hands in the Puerto Rican community so that we can continue to perpetuate the festivities that we have undertaken out of that building for decades. And I want to make sure that it will be for decades to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderman. I'd like to introduce now our senators, Iris Martinez and Omar Aquino.
Thank you very much. And before I go into also comments on the Puerto Rican Parade House, I want to also thank Mia. Mia, I don't know if I would have had that patience. I mean, I admire you and I thank you for keeping patience, because I know that was a very challenging situation. But you know, I look at it as, again, a police officer, a white police officer, standing there seeing a woman being attacked. Again, an attack on a woman. Once again, when we talk about an attack on women, here was a perfect example of a peace officer who showed no respect, couldn't care less about the woman being berated by this other white man, and they thought it was okay. Mia, it's not okay. And I am very disappointed that it took from June 14, when the incident happened, to today, which gave this man time to take a vacation, gave time for him now to resign without any kind of repercussions. I do believe that we have to continue to really pursue that, and I ask the Board of Commissions and Tony Preckwinkle to make sure that we look at this man's pension and the lack of doing his job. Why should he be compensated at the end of the day? So I say that. So Mia, thank you, but the fight is not over. Changing heads now to the Puerto Rican Parade Committee. As someone that grew up in this neighborhood, not too far from here, right in Mozart and North Avenue, that's where I grew up. As a young girl, I was very involved with the Puerto Rican parade. At the time when Luis Gutierrez was an alderman, I was working for Luis Gutierrez's office. I remember when the Puerto Rican parade house went up. I remember that I was the one that got the cement to have new curbs and gutters put around the Puerto Rican parade back as a staffer. And to me, seeing what's going on today, the Puerto Rican parade house, I am just really upset. I'm really angry. And we're going to do whatever it is that we can do to make sure that that building stays in the Puerto Rican community as it stands today. One of the things I want to say is, I contacted the Attorney General's office right away to make sure that there's an investigation. She was at the meeting this morning, taking down all the notes. She has made a commitment of getting back to us as soon as possible. My goal, and I think our goal here with my colleague, is to have a stop order, some kind of cease to exist right now at this moment at the Puerto Rican parade, because there are dollars that are still being spent there without no accountability. And I think that we have to make sure that in our community, the dollars that we so hard work for, that we give to our community, like the Puerto Rican Parade Committee, the money that us have given in the past to make sure that that building had infrastructure, that it did have programming, that it did have a sense of being there, because we wanted to make sure that we invest back in our community with state dollars. And to see it today in bankruptcy court, to me, is just unbelievable. I am really shocked. And the last 3 administrations in that park, in that building, have caused for all of this to happen. So I say that the Attorney General, there's also a police investigation on the dollars that went missing the weekend of the Puerto Rican Festival. There's our dollars that are unaccounted for. We want to know where that money's at. Right now, we do have the police department with an open investigation to finding out where they went, where those dollars went. But more important is, I don't care what administration was there. If you're guilty, you should go to jail. Bottom line. Thank you very much.
My name is Omar, PM State Senator in the 2nd District, Senator of the Humboldt Park community. And I want to first commend Mia for her composure. There's not many of us in the face of racism would be able to hold that composure that she did. And so I want to thank you for that. Because we live in a land that you get justice when justice is served, and we will get justice, because that gentleman was served with charged with 2 hate crime counts. We're going to make sure that that gentleman is found guilty of those things. But as stated earlier, and I'd like to let you know, Mia, last year I had a piece of legislation that became law that you can civilly sue someone for hate crimes. That you can get a civil measure back, so that when someone is a victim of a hate crime in the state of Illinois, that you get your reciprocity. Thank you so much for your composure. Thank you for coming and sharing your story and sharing that video, so that everyone can see that. You know, sometimes we feel that in the state of Illinois, in the city of Chicago, and Cook County, we are safe from certain things. There are hateful people out there that for some reason, feel that right now, because of the rhetoric that is said in the White House, that it is okay to berate someone on her birthday, nonetheless. So happy birthday to you that was ruined. But we're going to make sure you have happy birthdays from now on, that you can go to the Park District in the Forest Preserve or here and be safe, all right? In terms of what's happening in the Casa Puertorriqueña, it pleases me to say that we have just met recently at the National Puerto Rican Museum with some of the elected leaders, Puerto Rican elected leaders, many of the leaders behind me of the Puerto Rican community of not-for-profits and so forth. And we have a message for our Attorney General, who we are demanding that they open up an investigation on the Puerto Rican Parade Committee for years, not just recently, but for the last few years, to make sure that there is transparency and accountability for every dollar that has been collected and spent in the last several years. We also are demanding from the Attorney General that she help us make sure that there is a stay or cease and desist in the bankruptcy court matter. Right now, La Casa Puertorriqueña, a pillar of our community, is being put up for sale. And we want to stop that right now as soon as possible. La Casa Puertorriqueña, the Puerto Rican community is not for sale. No se vende. So we look to the Attorney General's leadership to assist us in that, to make sure that in La Casa Puertorriqueña we have our seniors that can continue to go there to play bingo, that we have our domino players that can go play, and that we have our families that go celebrate quinceañeras, birthdays, and so forth, that they can do that in the heart of Humboldt Park, in the heart of the Puerto Rican community, in La Casa Puertorriqueña. So I thank you all. It's a disappointment that right now an organization that has been out there for 70 years, that has represented the Puerto Rican community, the Puerto Rican Parade Committee, has lost all its credibility and its trust. If you go on social media, you hear the Puerto Rican people not speak highly of that. We are going to right that wrong. We are going to make sure that there is transparency and accountability, and we are going to right this ship so that we certainly have a Puerto Rican parade every single year, and that we are proud to say that Puerto Ricans are here in Chicago, we're here to stay, and we are proud people. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Immediately after, the next person will have questions and answers, which Christina would do. But we do want to thank you for being here, because the message has to be clear that this is a message. We will no longer tolerate generations, 4 and 5 generations of Puerto Ricans in this city, in the state, in the Midwest, in the United States. Needs every single American to know that we are American citizens. If you don't know it now. And we stand firm on our rights as American citizens, and we do not have to make a single effort being born here or being born in the island of Puerto Rico, that we have every single right as an American citizen. This has to be a clear message. And anyone that is in the public service to defend the laws of this country has to defend us with the same enthusiasm and the same rights as any other American, regardless of the color of their skin. We want that message to be clear and to be very clear. So we want to thank you for being here. We want to bring up, forgive me, I've known him since I was little, but Mario Nieves, the president of the largest motorcycle organization in the United States and perhaps in the world, the International Latin American Motorcycle Association. One of our partners in putting together the Puerto Rican Parade proposal building.
Thank you, and hello everyone, and definitely thank you all for being here. I am not the most eloquent speaker, but this is my neighborhood. Our organization was founded here in Humboldt Park 41 years ago. I would like to say a few things before I carry on, that our organization is not a gang, it's not a thug. We're professional motorcycle riders that ride long distances and live an adventure. We created a sport called motor touring. We've just had our national championship in Arkansas. We've had our world championships in Uruguay, South America, a couple of months ago. So we do take our things serious. But we're very involved in our community because we demand that us and every one of our chapters become an integral part of the community. And in all of Latin America, we're part of the social fiber of every community. We have asked our representatives that they call for a cease and desist of activities and suspend the Puerto Rican Parade Committee that has, we could say fraudulent, but that would be unfair. They need to be held accountable. We do not know what happened. We cannot accuse because we don't know. Well, whatever happened, it's obvious. So we asked them to suspend them immediately. We also ask that anybody donating funds, we thank everyone of you and anyone that donates funds to the Puerto Rican community. We love it, but guess what? In this case, it's wrong because those people do not have any accountability. Giving money to them is just like giving it away. We also ask that we form at least a minimum 10 organization oversight committee for the future so that things like this don't happen. This happened because there was no oversight committee on the Puerto Rican Parade Committee. Obviously, the Puerto Rican Parade Committee is defunct. We don't even want to hear the name because it lost all its credibility in our community. So we'll come up with something different, but there will definitely be an oversight committee because that is so important. In our organization, we have a board of directors. We have people that check us in everything that we do, and we have a treasury report. every month, something they never did. So that's important.
Yeah.
And because I found this out as I came back from my long trip from South America, I was sitting on a Sunday, found out at the Puerto Rican house, and I called and I said, well, what can we do? And so because it was for sale, and we don't want to lose it because it's in our community, my organization put up a bid to buy the house. We have the funding to buy the house because but we don't just want to buy it. We don't just want to buy it for us. See, the Puerto Rican, La Casa Puertorriqueña, is the cornerstone of our community. Just like Lama is also a cornerstone of our community. We want to leave it as it is. We want the little, I'm here to represent the little people. And the little people go in there and play dominoes, they play pool, they listen to music. How do I know? Because I've been there, and also because now they gravitated to our clubhouse on Fullerton because that's the only other place they can go. So we want to continue to have them there. I spent time in front of the house the other day when we were supposed to have a showing by the real estate. There were about 23 developers there with me, and they had some grandiose ideas, and I loved them, that really knocked the box out of all the little people there. So we don't have those grandiose plans. What we have is we want to keep that house for the community as it is, La Casa Puertorriqueña, to run the agenda of the Casa Puertorriqueña the way it should, and also as a headquarters of our organization, which there's no conflict with because we work together anyway. Now, there will be plans in the future because we talked to the Puerto Rican agenda and we've talked to Hispanic housing. Yes, there will be great plans for the future, but we must take these two things into account. There will be nothing there that's going to knock the little people out of there. We will make sure of that. Yes. We also, the last thing is, I have pages on Facebook and they've been swamped with people complaining, some are here today, of the unfairness of it all, because this is really an embarrassment to us as a community. And they want to demonstrate that the little people also want to be seen, because this goes beyond the bigger people in the community. So Sunday at 3 o'clock, we're all going to meet on Division in California, and we're going to march to that building, and the little people are going to demand accountability also. So we will be getting together Sunday, right here at Division and Sacramento, and we're going to walk up to that building and see if this is going to be followed through. Thank you very much.
We will now open this up for question and answer.
Mia, can you step to the microphones, please? Can you tell us what you would like to see happen in this case as it continues from here?
Basically, I just want justice for the whole thing.
And what would justice look like to you?
I want the officer to really, or the ex-officer to really be held accountable, whatever that looks like. And, you know, throughout this whole thing, from all the people who have apologized to me, the one person that hasn't is him.
Mia, how did this escalate? What happened before you started filming on your phone?
So, before I started recording, I had, I made my way to the shelter, and Mr. Tribus, along with 2 other people, were sitting there. And I had politely asked them to move and let them know that I had a permit for the area. Mr. Tribus then asked me twice if the shirt I was wearing was the Texas state flag. And I told him twice that no, it was the Puerto Rican flag. And right before I started recording, he actually stepped on top of the table, which is when I felt the most threatened, and hence me grabbing my phone to start recording, because I didn't know what was going to happen next.
You know, what was it like? In your head, what are you thinking when all of this is going on?
I can honestly say that I feared for my safety. This man who was coming for me was probably closer than she's standing to me right now. And although I pleaded multiple times with no help, I can tell that the man felt justified, and that was just fueling him to continue to become aggressive and step towards me. So I was scared. I was definitely scared. I am greatly surprised, shocked. I have never personally had an encounter with racism to this degree. So it was definitely an eye-opener, and you know, I always sympathize for people who I saw online being harassed, but now I get to empathize, and it's a completely different feeling.
And the impact on your life having experienced this, how do you now choose?
You know, I try not to let it affect me too much. I have a very carefree, open, forgiving spirit, and I'm hoping to just continue being that way.
The police officer or Mr. Travis is more offensive to you?
They're equally offensive.
When you watch the video, or have you watched the video?
I personally don't like the sound of my own voice, so no. I haven't seen it again.
When you were there that afternoon, again, what was going through your head when you were watching this officer just ignore you, walk away? What are you thinking then?
It was extremely surreal to think that someone whose job basically on them, protect and serve, to completely walk away, not even ignore at that point, but to completely walk away, it's still pretty surreal.
Mia, can you describe how the confrontation ended?
So my cousin stepped in, and he's the one that came forward and saw what was happening. He had been away for a moment grabbing things from the car for the party, and when he arrived, that's when Mr. Travis was basically on top of me, and he stepped in and he told him to calm down, and Travis then stepped back. Then he moved forward again, and my cousin did, put his arm up and stopped him physically. And then that's when the officer decided to tell my cousin, "Oh, calm down, sir." So that's how that altercation ended, but it basically ended, the video was about 36 minutes. The whole thing lasted for about 2 hours. I started recording at 1:45. The police did not leave until almost 4 o'clock, so it was just a long process.
What was the thing that made you start recording, start taking that video? And do you think things would have been different, shorter, longer if you had to do with it?
What made me start recording was the moment that he stepped on the table and showed his aggression fully to me. Well, not fully, but he showed a glimpse of it. And I haven't thought about what would happen if I had it recorded, although I'm pretty sure it would not have ended well for my safety.
Mia, can you tell us just a little bit more about yourself? So the birthday party, how old?
It was for my 24th birthday party. I'm not sure what to say. I'm a college graduate. I took a board test for Illinois. I'm state certified for the job that I have.
What is that job?
I'm a veterinary technician. Is there anything else you want?
So who was there at the party?
So at the party, friends and family showed up afterwards. Since it did last so long, a couple of people arrived while he was still there. But it was just really close family and friends to me that showed up there.
What do you think about the way that the county officials handled the investigation? This happens on the 14th, and then the mass gone, and then the death duty. What do you think about the way it was handled?
I'm a little disappointed at how long it took. This did happen June 14th, and obviously there was officers there who saw what happened and knew what happened, and I filed the official complaint on June 21st. And I basically never heard back from anyone again. I found out all my information the same way you guys did, through their Twitter. So no one ever directly contacted me to tell me this investigation's going on, he's on desk duty now. I found out through the media. So that was a little disappointing.
And what's the next step for you in terms of the officer forest preserve?
I am still going to treat the forest preserve the same. I will go there, I will be happy there. One officer is not the mark of all of them, and I'm very aware of that.
did you keep your composure?
I can thank my mother for raising me right, and I knew that no matter what would happen, God was going to protect me. So. I'm actually from Northwest area. I'm not from Humboldt Park, no, but I visit often.
Did you have a chance to celebrate your birthday?
Yes, I did get to finish, and we did barbecue, and we were able to spend a decent amount of time. So.
So 2 people who showed up initially, just you and your cousin.
Correct.
At the time, and the other staying. Right.
Thank you.
True example of excellence, specifically Puerto Rican excellence. Do we have any questions for our electeds or about Casa Puertorriqueña?
We want to do this in Spanish. What was the question? ¿Cuál fue la pregunta?
Lo que dijeron al principio de que esto debe tomarse para hacer un cambio de política, para que no sigamos bien.
Lo de la Casa Puertorriqueña. Bueno, tenemos una serie de políticas que le estamos presentando a la presidenta del condado.
Okay. All right, guys, so that was some pretty good coverage of the sort of the fallout from that incident that we were talking about where the woman was harassed at that forest preserve in Chicago. In case you missed that story, there's actually a really well done kind of put together piece from our sister station in Chicago about that. And we heard from that woman at the very top of this press conference, so it was pretty interesting to hear from her. But in case you missed the story, here it is all put together, how everything was found out, what the video entailed, and everything like that from our sister station. Check it out.
Breaking news. Hate crime charges have just been filed in the case of that racist rant at a Cook County forest preserve. Kristen Nicole gets us up to the minute.
Don and Corey, the confrontation was caught on video last month. 62-year-old Timothy Tribus is accused of verbally assaulting the woman in a forest preserve. Tribus allegedly yelled, and I quote, "You should not be wearing that." He was first charged with assault and disorderly conduct, but just this afternoon, prosecutors announced 2 felony hate crime charges. A Forest Preserve police officer who witnessed the rant but apparently did nothing about it resigned last night.
He was very remorseful, and he just, considered it being a really unfortunate incident where he really wasn't given a fair shake.
He feels like he wasn't given a fair shake.
Yeah, I mean, with all the publicity hype, with the video that was showed that he was inattention to his duty, that he was very inactive, and it was just that type of disposition that he took.
Tribus has several past convictions, including domestic battery and public consumption of alcohol. He's expected to be in court tomorrow.
So that's essentially kind of what happened, put together in that piece from Fox 32 in Chicago, in case you guys missed it. So that incident did happen about a month ago, and it was in that forest kind of area of Chicago, and it made a lot of news, social media kind of uproar about it. And now these alliances, Puerto Rican groups, are stepping out to speak out about it and to make people aware of what happened and how the response kind of felt flat for them. The response of that police officer responding when the woman was dealing with that. Now the man, as they mentioned, Timothy Tribus, has been charged with a hate crime in that incident. Over to a couple other stories that I want to share with you guys from this morning. Some other interesting stuff that's been going on across the nation.
You'll see small
Border Patrol. What's happening with illegal immigration and immigration in general, and the children, as well as some other kind of feel-good stories about what's going on with the latest SCOTUS nomination and those type of things. So let me cue that up for you, and we'll play it out for you.
You'll see small footprints.
Border Patrol agents say it's happening more and more.
Okay, this is not the footprint of even a adolescent child. This is obviously a toddler.
Tender-aged migrants crossing illegally with adults claiming to be their parents, but in fact are not. Recently, Border Patrol rescued a 4-month-old from a man falsely identifying as her father. Agents later discovering it's not the first time the man used a child to avoid long-term custody.
At no point should a child be placed in any type of harm or danger, and that's exactly what's happening. They're being used as a commodity to circumvent a loophole.
This is the first year Border Patrol carefully tracked fraudulent family cases in the Rio Grande Valley after agents noticed heightened use of fake documents. In fiscal year 2018, Ortiz reported 600 instances.
At first you do, it does kind of surprise you, and then after a while you see it so often that it just becomes kind of routine.
On Thursday, officials revealed in 7 of 103 cases involving children under 5 years old separated from their guardians, the adult was determined not to be the parent. Cases like these are used to justify sometimes lengthy vetting processes, but many immigration advocates say these children call for special circumstances, supporting a federal judge's decision to expedite the reunification process. Lee Gellert with the ACLU said in a statement, the court could not have been clearer that business as usual is not acceptable. In McAllen, Texas, Emily Ikeda, Fox News.
Soccer fans go wild as their teams advance in the World Cup. Celebrations also taking place here, Wall Street, as two of the most recognized brands try to score a different kind of goal. Adidas has long been at the forefront of football, partnering with FIFA in 1970. Nike, on the other hand, didn't begin investing in soccer until the mid-90s when the U.S. hosted the tournament. Both companies driven by the holy grail of demographics, FIFA's claim to 4 billion fans worldwide. That means visibility is vital. Nike's logo is splashed on 10 teams, Adidas 12. It's a high-stakes gamble, and Adidas felt the sting when Germany, the 2014 champs, got knocked out.
The way they've sort of bet on those teams in terms of their marketing and their, the strips they wear, and they then suffered as a result.
The title contenders, France and Croatia, both bear the swoosh on their jerseys.
We've been in the game of football for over 20 years, and it's the first time that we've ever had an all-Nike final with both teams wearing Nike.
Experts say the impact is serious, but not permanent.
You probably will see a hit over the next couple of quarters. It will subside. It's really not a problem of Adidas' own making. It's simply the way things have fallen.
Adidas admits it's had lower expectations for Russia because of, quote, lower financial opportunities in the host country. That leaves the gloating to Nike.
You go back to our fourth quarter earnings announcement, which was obviously we also announced our fiscal year 18 results, and our football business was a little over 2.1, almost $2.2 billion.
In New York, Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
Senate Democratic leadership eager to pick up seats to take back the majority this November is in a tough spot on Judge Brett Kavanaugh's nomination for the Supreme Court. The base and outside groups like Planned Parenthood are pushing to fight.
I am calling on the Senate to reject the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh. If you fail us, this country won't be the land of the free anymore.
Senator Patty Murray, the assistant Democratic leader at an abortion rights event, encouraged the base to speak up.
Have them make their voices heard to their senator wherever they live. That's what our strategy is.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says Democrats are in a jam.
I know what you're trying to do. Your base is all over you. They're threatening your very existence. I know that you can't vote yes because of the politics of the moment.
But there are also 10 Senate Democrats up for re-election in November in states President Trump won. So voting against his Supreme Court nominee could put them in jeopardy with their constituents.
What race would that be for me? Mitch McConnell's not pressuring me. Chuck's not pressuring me. No one's pressuring me, really.
Digital ads are already running against 6 red state Democrats, pressuring them to back Judge Kavanaugh.
Will Senator Heitkamp stand with us or them?
If some of those red state Democrats lose, that also moves Democratic leader Chuck Schumer further away from becoming majority leader. With Democrats launching a new attack against Kavanaugh each day to see what sticks, current Majority Leader Mitch McConnell blasted them for using scare tactics and distortions trying to defeat him.
It was the perfect conspiracy theory, catnip for their far-left base. The only problem was it wasn't true.
A blue state Democrat tried to shift the pressure to moderate Republicans Lisa Murkowski of Alaska in Susan Collins of Maine on the issue of abortion rights.
Ultimately, the American people are going to make their voices heard to those small number of senators, it's a small number, who are going to determine the outcome here.
A new Fox News poll reveals half of voters, 50% to 42%, want the Senate to vote on Kavanaugh's nomination before the midterm elections. That is something Republican leadership plans to deliver. On Capitol Hill, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
Well, as you guys can imagine, the earlier today indictments of 12 Russian hackers surrounding the election of 2016 has prompted a lot of response on both sides. And right now we have a live feed coming in from the Hudson Institute of National Security Advisor Dan Coates, and he is speaking on this, as well as simultaneously we're about to get in some video of Senator Mark Warner's response, so the Democratic response to this new announcement of these indictments. So let's go over now to Dan Coates, see what he's saying, and then we'll go over to Senator Warner as well.
Reagan was trust and verify. That's what I came to Congress with. Right now, I'm the verify guy. IC is the verify community. So we are focusing on what is happening, both before and now current, subsequent to the talks. But we're right at the beginning of this, and we'll continue to evaluate it. Obviously, North Korea is probably, trying to figure out, okay, I mean, we're at the beginning of negotiations, so I'm just not going to give up the ship right now. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think it's too early to determine exactly, definitively that, this is where they're going to end up, or be there halfway through, or
so no really dramatic.
Nothing really dramatic. There's been some reporting. Some of it has not been accurate. Some of it has been accurate. So there are some continuing activities, but some of those that have been reported have not been verified.
Let's get back to the election and disinformation operations. It seems to me that social media is one of the places, at least if we look at 2016, where disinformation was very accurate. Is that still the case now?
Yes, very much so. I think I noted that in my remarks. The exploitation of social media is very prevailing and increasing and very sophisticated. Who would have thought that ISIS, using the 7th century barbarian measures of imposing physical harm on and death on people, and their tactics, would be so sophisticated in also using cyber early on and social media early on to recruit, to train, and still inspire. The defeat in the desert has not resulted in the defeat of terrorist organizations like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We see them spread around the world, and it still remains a terrorist threat to us. And social media is one of the ways in which they continue to raise money, recruit, train, inspire, and we have to be aware of that.
And when you go to social media companies and you say, your platform is being targeted and used in a very, very specific way by these different hostile groups, do you get the cooperation that you think you need from these companies?
We have the obligation to learn and warn, and we do. We are in the process of working with social media companies in terms of taking responsibility for what they put out. We've had some successes. We've had some interactions which haven't been as successful as we would like. We're going to continue to do that. But there's a lot of brand protection. There's a lot of, well, listen, if we do that and our competitors don't, then we're at a disadvantage. We try to talk about the responsibility relative to their commitment to help us address these threats and keep our people safe.
So there's a real range of response from pretty solid positive to, well, I don't think we can help you.
By the way, what's interesting to me is that, we only collect against foreign intelligence. And so we know a lot less about the American people than our adversaries. And we know a lot less than some of our social media outlets know about their customers. So
Google knows us better than the federal government.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, in a way I feel good, in a way I feel bad. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. And you were saying that they're sort of trying to polarize us and magnify differences. This reminds me a bit of what the communists used to do during the Cold War and the Soviet Union's kind of key propaganda technique. I think maybe some of our younger members of the audience may not know what this is all about. If you could explain it a bit.
Well, when the wall came down, we thought, okay, I mean, this is going to be a new Russia, so-called reset. And for a period of time, it was a different relationship. Then Russia reached out and said, maybe we've gone too far. Why don't we ask the guy who ran the KBG? He's a pretty savvy guy. He's been listening to Americans all his life, or adversaries and so forth, and conducting everything that the KGB did and still does, different under a different acronym. And that was a game changer. So I described it as the Russian bear after the fall of the wall went into the cave, into hibernation. He's out of the cave, hungry, and he's clawing for more territory, more influence, and using the same tactics that we saw in the Cold War and more. And the more results in a lot of that in cyber.
It's interesting that during the Cold War, they had the advantage of communist parties and networks of supporters around the world. They don't quite have that, although they seem to be trying to rebuild sort of loyal parties and factions. But it looks like on balance with the cyber tools, they can actually do a better job than the Soviet Union could of this kind of disinformation, black propaganda.
They're really good at lying, deceit, deception, seeding, subtly seeding and not so subtly seeding dissension among adversaries. That the president made some comments about NATO, and his closing comments were ones I really thought were important, because if NATO comes unglued, Putin wins. And he sees that, he's trying to seize that potential opportunity, and I think we need to stand up against it.
Right. And so the pattern is not so much that the Russians are supporting one side or another in a political battle, though sometimes they may do that, but they're trying to get both sides madder and more divided. Is this part of the
Well, whether that's their method, that's what they succeeded in doing. I think it certainly was designed as a strategy, and they've had some success, unfortunately.
What can we do to counter this?
Transparency. I've talked to my colleagues in different nations, particularly in Europe. The more we provide our people with what we know the Russians are doing, the more we can inform our public not to just take for granted what is put out in the media is truth. We need more critical thinking, I think. We're barraged by media, by breaking news, by news outlets rushing to be the first, because if we don't do it, 3 others are going to do it, and our ratings will go down and their ratings will go up. And so there's no filter between news, information that comes into the system. There's no editor, as we used to have in the paper. There's nobody sitting in an office upstairs saying, we got to run this by the boss, before we print it. It's going to be too late to do that, because we want the news now. We want to access it, on our iPhones right away. And so we have to inform our people. Just don't believe everything that you hear out there. I mean, we are agencies that seek the truth. We can't shade it. We can't politicize it. It has to be, the truth is what it is. It's just the facts. And I think our public needs to gain some ability to ask questions and seek verification before we jump to conclusions and rush to the camera to say, I just heard this and wow, oh, you know, and then the next day on page 13, well, that was not exactly what it should have been.
Yeah. So if you had a chance to speak with Mr. Putin at this sort of crucial period in U.S.-Russian relations, what's your message, President Putin?
All right, guys, so a little bit of reaction there from the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates. Let's switch it over, though, and check out what Senator Mark Warner has to say. He just came up to this podium. This is live. Check it out.
No allegations of knowing involvement by anyone on the campaign, and no allegation that the alleged hacking affected the election results. This is consistent with what we've been saying all along. Do you believe that's consistent? Do you believe that
I believe this White House, this president and his allies, who continue to dismiss the Mueller investigation. My hope would be at this point they cut it out. This investigation needs to conclude. We don't know what the next step or the next indictments from the Mueller team will be, but I got to believe there's more to come. And what is so concerning to me, and I think most Americans, has been the president's cavalier attitude towards this whole incident. And again, one of the reasons why he should not meet with Vladimir Putin one-on-one. There needs to be other Americans in the room to make sure we know what really happens. He needs to make sure as well, if he and his team are not willing to make the facts of this indictment a top priority of the meeting with Putin, then he needs to cancel the Helsinki summit. Well, again, we've seen the results of his ad hoc style. When he went in and met with Kim Jong-un, came out, Kim Jong-un got what he wanted, a photo op. The president tweeted that Americans could rest peacefully because somehow North Korea was going to disarm. And we've seen, the intelligence community said, we've seen no progress on that front.
Do you have any information about what member of Congress or candidate for Congress sought out Russian help in the last election? That's mentioned in the indictment.
Again, I've not read through the whole indictment yet.
Senator, is there any sign of Russian meddling in the 2018 midterms that you've seen?
We can, I would simply take the words of, I believe it was Dan Coates who said this, is that in public testimony, that he expects the Russians will be back in this election cycle.
He expects, but have you seen any sign that it's actually...
I'm not going to get into specifics, but one of the things that I am very concerned about is the security of our election system for 2018. It's one of the reasons why I raised in the hearings this week, when we've got 3 vendors that control 90% of all of our voter files in terms of the IT systems. You know, we need to have the ability to work with those vendors to make sure they're safe and secure.
Have you seen any evidence yourself, though, that anyone in the Trump campaign did collude with
I'm not. You
intentionally?
You've asked me that question 100 times. You can ask me 100 more times. You know, when we finish the investigation, I'll respond to that. But we still got more work to do.
Because I mean, the critics, the White House will say over and over again that there is no evidence of collusion. I mean, are they right?
We have already in the public domain evidence of Russians reaching out to a Trump aide, Mr. Papadopoulos. He's even pled guilty. We have evidence that Russian agents reached out to Donald Trump Jr., resulting in a meeting where there was supposedly the proffer of dirt on Hillary Clinton in a meeting that included the president's son, the president's son-in-law, the president's campaign manager. I mean, I think we're well past the fact that there's plenty of evidence of Russian attempts to reach out to folks involved in the Trump campaign. And again, taking Donald Trump Jr.'s words directly, he thought that was a pretty good idea.
Last question.
I know that you said that the vast majority of today's information is new, but how many of the names in today's indictments had the
Again, I'm not going to get into this. One of the things about our investigation is we don't get into the specific names of people we are looking into or the specific witnesses. But the specificity of Bob Mueller's work today was great work. This investigation, 23 indictments, 5 guilty pleas, now direct evidence of Russian spies hacking into the DNC, interfering in our state election systems. Already we had evidence of the use of social media. I want the investigation to conclude as soon as possible, but the most important thing is that we get the full story, and that full story gets relayed to the American public. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Worked with all 50 states, and we're ready.
Are the laggards doing better at this point?
I think they are. I think nobody wants to be the be the one that takes it down because they didn't have their act together. So we're hearing that. As I said, we have worked with, the FBI's worked with the DHS, our intelligence community for warnings and so forth. And we've worked with all 50 states, and it's ongoing. It's going to have to keep ongoing right up to the day of the election.
And from what you're hearing back from Congress and others, is your sense that on a bipartisan basis, people in Washington think that the work that you guys are doing is sufficient and proper?
I think we're seeing that. The Republicans are teaming up with Democrats, both in the Senate and in the House, to ensure that everybody's on board.
Because this would certainly be a key. If one party or the other party said they're not doing the right thing, that would be a terrible.
Well, we've been witnessing this on another subject, and we've seen the impact of it.
Yep. What really worries you most when you think about scenarios that might unfold based on the kind of unrivaled exposure you have to the threats that the country faces? What are the things that really keep you up at night?
Well,
do you ever sleep?
Yeah, restlessly sometimes. A couple of things. One, the possession of nuclear weapons of mass destruction by terrorist groups. And when you think about 9/11, 2 planes flying into the Twin Towers, one plane flying into the Pentagon. If either one of those planes, or all 3 of them, had any kind of weapon of mass destruction aboard, we would be talking about deaths not in 3,000. We'd be talking about 300,000 or maybe 3 million or more. So preventing proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, particularly into groups, terrorist groups that are not under any state control, have a theology or an ideology that that victory is killing the opposition, whether by its beheading or through a nuclear device. That's one. The second is, frankly, a cyber 9/11. Think about New England in January, the grid going down for 3 days. A lot of people are going to suffer and die. Think about taking away a hit on the banks that wipes people's lifetime savings out, and we don't know where it came from.
Markets, I suppose.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know where it came from. We don't know where the money is, and on and on. So, you do toss and turn at night about scenarios that you hope will never happen.
In your view, is the intelligence community as a whole getting the kind of resources and support that it needs to do the job that needs to be done?
We are, and thanks to this administration and the Congress, we have really upped our ante, and we've been provided the resources we need to do what we need to do. And we have some terrific capabilities. We've got some innovative people. We got some young people who come out. I'm a liberal arts major with a law degree, but I mean, I should not be in the operational efforts of cyber or technology. Look at it from a different perspective. Fortunately, we've hired a lot of really capable, smart people, a lot of young people coming on that have technological capabilities, STEM capabilities that I never even dreamed of. And so I'm every visit I make, and I make a lot of them to our various agencies and their components, I'm so impressed with the technical capabilities we have. We're an innovative country. Democracy and freedom produces some great stuff if it's done the right way.
Well, thank you, Director Coates. You have, I don't know if I should call you Senator, Ambassador, but Director, I guess.
Dan is probably the best.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. The work that you're doing is important. I think everybody here and on television appreciates the the importance of what you do and wishes you every possible success.
Well, Walter, I want to say something. I came across this article a couple of days ago about what maybe people are thinking and about Donald Trump's unorthodox foreign policy. And it ends with, "We should brace ourselves for a wild ride." Guess who wrote that? Walter Russell Mead. Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago. I highlighted it and cut it out. Anyway, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you and back at Hudson. And
well, great to be with you.
Thanks for asking me to be here.
And I know the director has to get out quickly. As you can imagine, his schedule is packed. So if the audience could sit while he leaves quickly to get on to whatever he's doing next. I don't think he can tell us what he's doing next, but and thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Take my water.
Please do. And
all right, guys, some interesting reaction there. Again, from the Director of Intelligence, Dan Coates, speaking at the Hudson Institute. That was broadcast on C-SPAN and sent over to us for us to kind of view some of the reaction to today's announcement. Well, let's go over to some other of our top stories that we have prepared from here and around the country from some of our other sister stations. If you're joining us, you know that we're in the newsroom here at Fox 5 DC, giving you all the live stuff that we see coming in. And right now, nothing really further from that. I'll be looking around for a little bit more, but we might roll out with some of these packages so that you can kind of see what's been going on, take a note of some of the latest stories that are happening.
Is giving Amazon's facial recognition software a second try, despite widespread criticism from civil rights groups after the first 6-month trial period ended last month.
I think we didn't have enough time to finish the testing that we wanted to do to see if we could perfect, along with Amazon, the technology for facial recognition using it in crowds.
Introduced in 2016, Amazon Recognition can identify over 100 faces in a crowd at once. Subscribers pay a fee to upload photos and videos, which the service compares to facial scans from camera feeds in real time.
And second match. That's her.
Mayor Buddy Dyer says incorporating extra technology-based policing will get more criminals off the streets.
If there's a fugitive, we can use facial recognition to spot them in a crowd. That would certainly help us.
The city will use 8 surveillance cameras to test the software, and officials say the only people of interest will be 7 police officers who volunteer to participate.
I can assure you that images of ordinary citizens aren't being put into the system right now.
Chief Mina isn't the only fan of the technology. A sheriff's office in Oregon has been using it for over a year to catch criminals by comparing their mugshots to facial scans.
We're going to use it only for bad guys or perhaps somebody that's lost a missing person to try to ID them, so we won't infringe on anybody's rights.
But local and national civil rights groups argue the technology goes too far. A statement from the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, reads in part, Orlando's decision to launch an additional pilot of recognition is especially troubling given the amount of community concerns related to problems with the software. Instead of working with the community to address these problems, the city instead remains committed to subjecting its residents to an environment of mass surveillance. Now that a second trial's been approved, the city plans on working with Amazon to determine when the testing phase will start and how long it'll last. In Orlando, Florida, Ali Rafa, Fox News.
These kids thought they were about to get in trouble. Instead, they got a nice surprise from the Castleberry Police Department, and it was much cooler than cuffs. Eric Ortega and his brother Hector are wheels up, flying high on a surprise birthday gift Hector received this week from a Castleberry cop.
We got a call about possibly some unattended kids on bicycles, so I went out to the area just to see if I could make contact with them.
That's when Officer Mike Caruso found Eric and Hector. It was Hector's 10th birthday, but initially he and his brother saw Officer Caruso and thought, "Oops, we're getting in trouble here."
We're getting a warning.
Because they weren't wearing helmets, but they weren't in trouble. So they asked Officer Caruso for some gear.
We always tell our dad if he can buy us helmets, and he says, "Oh, I don't have buddies, so."
Unsure if he had any at the station, Officer Caruso made no promises, but showed up a few days later with helmets, bike locks, reflectors, and all kinds of goodies, all from the department's bike drive.
They were surprised. I don't know if they actually believed that I was going to come back out with all the goodies and stuff.
A belated birthday gift.
He's nice. He was really nice. He always had a smile on his face.
Keeping two boys riding high for a long time to come. And the boys tell me they're feeling a lot safer riding their bikes this week, so they've been riding them a lot more. In Castleberry, Lyra Greenberg, Fox 35 News.
8-year-old Diamond Rose and 6-year-old Divine love playing outside with their puppy, Roxy. They keep her cage clean. They keep her bowl full of dog food.
She loves chewing on the donkey.
And tonight, they're keeping their little hearts open to the idea that someday Roxy will come home.
Yeah, we were just like this, and then he just came out of nowhere, and then he came up to us. He said, "Cute dog, can I pet him?" And Diamond said no.
The two sisters say Monday afternoon, two men slowly drove past their home in a newer pearl white Toyota or Nissan with tinted windows. The car made a U-turn and one man hopped out, approaching the girls.
Diamond was holding him. He pulled her by the collar and then picked her up like this, and he was squeezing her stomach.
After ripping Roxy from Diamond's arms, the two sisters say the man hopped back into the waiting car with the puppy.
I was like, "Give me my puppy back," and we said, "Daddy, Daddy."
Once I heard the kids screaming, I said, "Hey, what?" She said, "Somebody stole the dog." I'm like, "What?" I shot out. I ran fast as I could all the way to the street.
Their father, Donald, tells me he hopped into his own car and tried to follow the thieves, but it was too late. They were gone. So he called Tacoma police.
"Hey, brother, how you doing? I'm your neighbor, man. I live across the street."
We tagged along as Donald and his daughters door-knocked neighbors, hoping surveillance cameras might have captured something.
My kids was outside playing with it. I have a little bitty puppy, and some guys drove up, ran up to my daughter and snatched it out of her hand.
His neighbor Tony thinks his camera may have caught the thieves in the act. He plans to email that video to Donald.
All right, Tony, I appreciate you, brother.
Who does this to kids?
Yeah, that's the main thing about it. That's kind of crazy. This guy don't do it to somebody else's daughter. I don't want nobody else to feel this type of pain or nobody other child to go through this, you know what I mean?
And we want to see her again.
In Tacoma, Jamie Tompkins, Q13 News.
It's the science behind the spirit that led Kirby Callis Lewis to open Ula Distillery on Capitol Hill 9 years ago.
I always have loved math and science.
This place is a laboratory for this spirit scientist.
We call them gin kits. It's a gin botanical mixture, and each one of these will infuse a 100-liter container. We do gin, vodka, and whiskey.
The process of grain to glass is his passion.
We make about 15,000 cases a year.
Plans have been in the works to expand Ula's products internationally.
The last year, it's been a real focus to start exporting.
Exporting to England, Germany, Belgium, and Spain, Kirby says the projected profit from entering the European market would increase overall business
by 30%.
But now the cork has been put in the bottle for that plan.
The tariffs have absolutely pulled the rug out from under us. We completely shut down that program.
He even bought a several $100,000 copper still to increase production for exporting.
It's a big purchase for a small business.
That cost, the lost projected profit, is having an impact professionally.
There's some people we were going to hire that we won't hire now.
And personally.
Hard to not kind of feel like a pawn.
He says the tariff impact also hits other businesses like breweries, wineries, still makers on equipment, which could impact consumers.
Certainly there'll be pressure on prices, for sure.
For a business with already slim profit margins,
it's pennies per bottle, not even $1 per bottle.
Kirby says like his bourbon in barrels need time, so does his business right now.
It's going to take some confidence building because I feel like this just came out of nowhere.
The focus now, aging locally instead of globally. In Seattle, Tadovika Prikyan, Q13 News.
When you think of the Library of Congress, you probably think about reading books. But the folks here, well, they've cleared some shelf space to play ball.
Grew up bleeding Dodger blue.
I can relate to that. Meet Susan Rayberg. She is the curator of Baseball Americana. It's a brand new exhibit at the Library of Congress in Washington. Now, within these walls, our national pastime is being traced from its very first mention in this small book from the 1700s right through the original handwritten laws of baseball back in 1857.
These are the laws. The laws of baseball. Absolutely. Not the rules, the laws.
There are drawings of early fields that look a lot more like houses than diamonds and historic artifacts from early women's leagues.
This uniform belonged to Dottie Ferguson, who led the league in steals.
But one of the library's most prized possessions, this letter from Jackie Robinson to the Dodgers' Branch Rickey, the pair that together ended baseball's ban on African-American players in 1947.
And he's thanking him for all of the kindnesses Rickey has showed Jackie and his wife, his family, through what was a really difficult time.
You know, chances are you've probably only ever seen a grandstand from sitting in a grandstand, so they built this, a 28-foot, 17-row section of grandstand, so you can see exactly what the players see. In fact, there is a lot to see. Babe Ruth's shoes, Bryce Harper's first lineup card, diagrams of DC's old Griffith Stadium, the first MVP trophy surrounded by historic baseballs and the mitts and bats that tried to catch and hit them.
So this notion of community was really appealing to us.
David Mandel, the head of exhibits, says the goal here is to show how baseball has brought America together. And yes, he's got a few favorite items of his own.
I'm really drawn to that. I'm a Cubs fan. I'm from Chicago originally, so the bits about the Cubs winning the World Series are especially meaningful after a lifetime of failure and suffering.
Ups and downs, an important lesson to remember in both baseball and life.
At the old ball game.
Baseball Americana will run for the next year. At the Library of Congress, Tom Fitzgerald, Fox 5 Local News.
Pretty amazing that we have all of that amazing history right here in our backyard at the Library of Congress, and that was our Tom Fitzgerald doing the reporting there, gearing up for the big All-Star Week. So we're going to have tons more coverage for you this weekend and into next week as the All-Star Game is here in D.C. on Tuesday, the 17th. So we're getting ready to send some people out there and even do our whole morning show on Tuesday morning from Nationals Park, I believe. So a lot of stories coming your way about Fan Fest and everything that's going on for the weekend. And then into Monday, the Home Run Derby, Tuesday, the All-Star Game, tons of coverage for baseball because why not? It's America's game. We love it, and we're super fans here as well. So that will do it for our stream today, guys, inside the newsroom. We'll be back on Monday as normal at 11:30 a.m. With any of the breaking news that we have coming in, and we'll see what President Trump is up to abroad as he has that highly anticipated meeting with Putin in Finland. We'll be watching for that and bringing you everything live that we have. So check in with us here on our YouTube channel, and don't forget to follow us on social, Fox 5 DC, on all of our platforms. So for now, guys, we'll roll it out, and we'll wish you guys a happy weekend. Have a great, safe, and happy weekend. Enjoy the weather wherever you are, and we'll see you in here in the newsroom on Monday. Take care, guys.